Now, step 5 takes on a religious fervor. Understand the crusader has nothing else in life. They only have their crusade. It's the only thing that gives them value and worth. So if you dare criticize their crusade, or not even the crusade itself, because usually the crusades are noble, but criticize their motives in championing this crusade, they will vehemently respond and retaliate against you. And since they can't point to the fact that their crusade has failed and that it's not feasible, let alone moral, let alone whether they have a right to be championing this crusade, they immediately start calling you names. Now, understand the religious aspect of it. For example, if you're not a Muslim, you're traditionally called the infidel. If you're not a Christian, you're typically called the heathen. So you have these names here. But you see today nothing more than a modern version of the infidel heathen pejorative, where if you're against socialism, obviously you're a teabagger or a Nazi. If you're you don't believe in global warming, you're a global warming denier. And if you're against illegal immigration, you're obviously a racist. Never mind, you might have legitimate concerns or questions about these. If you are against the crusade, you are immediately bad, and you are labeled as such with various pejoratives. Tenet 6 is cowardice, and this is one of the most despicable aspects of crusaders. Understand, you don't champion bad things. You don't say, I'm for kicking puppies. All right? I'm for bashing in the shins of nuns. These are not things you champion. Every crusade is noble. All right? But if you ever question, again, the ulterior motives of the crusader, let alone the feasibility of the crusader will immediately take the crusade and hide behind it. Great example is public education. All right? If you have sincere, legitimate concerns about the finances of the public schools and whether we're getting our bang for our buck and whether the kids are getting actually educated, legitimate adult concerns, it does not take a millisecond for the teachers union to grab the kid, put a gun to the kid's head and say, give us more money or else the kid gets it. Right? They are cowards. They hide behind the noble child, the innocent child, so they can advance their own aims. Now, it's not just the teachers unions that do this, but again, if you're critical of poverty relief efforts in Africa, obviously you are against blacks. If you're against illegal alien, sincere, legitimate, security, economic concerns, again, you're racist. They hide behind the morality and nobility of the crusade and thereby mute your argument so that you're now on the defensive trying to defend yourself of being against kids or something like that. Tenet 7, hypocrisy. Not so much that they are abusing a crusade to make themselves feel better, but rather a disproportionate amount of crusaders fall into the left-leaning political spectrum. Right? And what's great about this is that the vast majority of crusaders have had their wealth and have their luxurious standards of living owed to one thing and one thing only, and that's capitalism. You'll see no end of the number of children crusaders who are children of barons of industry and people who worked hard and make a lot of money and owe their cushy little lifestyle to the free market. But then, while they're in college and for the rest of their lives, do nothing but rail against capitalism and criticize the system that afforded their wealth. A perfect example is your typical, college kid nowadays, where they go out and they protest because it's fun and down with the system, man, and corporations ain't paying their fair share, and man, I'm going to major in philosophy and philosophize, while their dad and mom are slaving away at some job to put food on the table and put their kid through college. Right? Now that's very common, but let's take a look at another group of people, the Kennedys. Patrick and Joseph, they were the grandfather, great-grandfather of, I guess, the modern-day, current generation of Kennedys. You can look through the genealogy. And they're the ones that started the finance. They're the ones that built up the empire. They started in bars. Thank you. It was pretty cool. Booze is good. And then moved into banking and so forth. Now, Bar JFK, the president, John F. Kennedy, what the heck have the rest of the Kennedys done except rally against the system that built up their family's original fortune? You look at Ted Kennedy, I don't think he ever voted for one pro-capitalist measure. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you want to look at a screwball who's out there pissing away the trust fund and for various liberal causes, go ahead. And then Caroline Kennedy, she's in the arts. Isn't that? She's in the arts. She cares about the arts. That's wonderful. So, but again, you see the hypocrisy where these veritable children owe their lifestyle and their luxury to capitalism, but bite the hand that feeds them. The absolute perfect example, though, however, has got to be Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers had some associations, friend of Barack Obama's back in the olden days, professed communist, and now, surprise, surprise, a professor of education over at the University of Illinois. Back when he was in his youth, in the 60s, he had a crusade. He was going to rally against the man and was participating in some of the bombing of police stations, and just a wonderful little spoiled trust fund baby brat. So you say, well, boy, I wish I could run around and bomb police stations and have the time to, espouse lofty thoughts like communism. How did he put food on the table? Well, guess who his dad is? Well, his dad's Thomas Ayers, chairman and CEO of Commonwealth Edison. The hypocrisy is just astounding. It's just astounding what a hypocritical little child Bill Ayers is. But now he's educating your children on how to educate other children, never mind. The final tenet of crusaderism is that there is no production. In the end, there's the crusader on their deathbed, they're dying. They have not produced $1 of GDP. Not one penny of real economic production has been produced. Understand that since they have their lives paid for, right, and they do not go into a productive career, right, but rather go and say, well, we need charitable donations, we need this, we need that, and never ever get around to actually solving the ailments of society they profess to intend to solve, by default they have led a parasitic existence. They don't serve society at all. They just take resources from society and make themselves feel good with it. It's a sad life, but it really behooves the question, when a crusader is lying there, have they tricked themselves so much into thinking that they actually did good? Or do deep down inside they have a twinge of guilt and realize, wow, I didn't do anything for society, and that's it. So that's the final tenet. Now there is one final aspect of crusaderism, it's a very important aspect, and that is the destructive principle. Right? The destructive principle is this: it is easier to destroy something that already exists than to create something of value that is new. So for example, if do you rally against corporations? Do you just protest against corporations and how they're evil? Or do you actually start a corporation yourself? Which one is easier? Well, it's obviously easier to just say corporations suck and then go and protest against them with no rhyme or reason. Right? Now you see this with the Ronald McDonald Nazis here. Much easier to crusade against Ronald McDonald than them go and actually start a restaurant or a corporation. What I find ultimately hypocritical is here they are, Corporate Accountability International, but not one of them have ever ran a corporation. They're going to criticize corporations, but they've never ran one themselves. Right? So you see the idea. It's just, well, here's an easy target. That's easy to shoot down. Let's do that, and then I'll feel good.